The second morning after Christmas, I decided to visit my old friend Sherlock Holmes, and found him sitting on the sofa with a big, old, torn hat on the chair next to him. The mysterious hat looked like the beginning of an interesting case, but was only something Peterson, the doorman, came across in an extraordinary way. While Peterson was coming home on Christmas morning, he saw a man whose hat had been knocked off his head. He was carrying a big fat goose, and when he raised his stick to reach for the hat, he smashed a shop window. Peterson, who saw the whole situation, wanted to defend him in case of any accusations, but the stranger, seeing Peterson approaching, ran away, leaving the hat and goose. So Peterson became the owner of the Christmas goose, and Sherlock the owner of the old hat. While I was listening to this adventure, Peterson himself arrived at Baker Street. "The goose, Mr. Holmes, the goose!" he cried. "What of it?" "Look what was inside the bird." Peterson stretched out his hand, revealing a brilliantly shining blue stone. "I suppose you know what you have got?" Sherlock asked him. "It's a precious stone." "Not only is it a precious stone, it is the blue carbuncle that was stolen recently from the Countess of Morcar. The young plumber John Horner has been accused of this theft on the basis of the statement of James Ryder, the upper attendant at the Hotel Cosmopolitan. There is a reward for the person who finds and returns it." So the mysterious hat then became the beginning of a new case. Sherlock ordered Peterson to buy a big fat goose, and to put advertisements in every newspaper that a goose and a hat had been found, and the owner is welcome to collect his belongings that day at Baker Street. Later on, at the exact time announced in the advertisement, a tall man appeared at the front door of Holmes' house. He introduced himself as Henry Baker. "We have held on to your belongings for some time, as we expected you to put an advertisement in the paper," offered Sherlock as an explanation. "I don't have much money, and I didn't intend to spend any more of it in an attempt to recover my loss," came the reply. "Indeed. We were also compelled to eat your bird." "You ate it?" "Yes, but we bought you a new one, hopefully as big and fat as the last one. We still have the remains of the old one if you wish to keep them." Sherlock carefully observed the face of the stranger to see if his comments would have any effect, but Baker only laughed at the idea of taking away an eaten goose, and simply took his belongings, thanked them for their kindness, and left. So much for Mr. Baker. He certainly didn't know much of the matter. He must be innocent. Sherlock continued his investigation by going to Covent Garden, where he knew that only the best geese were sold. Before long, Sherlock and I found Mr. Breckenridge, the man who apparently sold the finest birds. He turned out to be a very impatient type, who became very aggressive when Sherlock started asking detailed questions about where he got the bird. It wasn't until Sherlock used his old trick by bribing £1 that he told us everything we needed to know. In the end, he showed us the full list of his suppliers, from which we found out that the mysterious jewel-fed goose had come from Mrs. Oakshot's farm. We were just about to leave from the farm when we heard a salesman shouting at a trembling figure of a man standing in front of him. "Stop asking me about the geese. I've had enough of you and your stupid questions." "But one of them was mine," begged the little man. "Well then, ask Mrs. Oakshott for it." "But she sent me to talk to you," he said, but the salesman had already walked away. As we observed the whole situation, Sherlock decided that instead of going to Mrs. Oakshott, we should talk to this man. "Excuse me," said Holmes, walking up to him, "but I couldn't help overhearing what you gentlemen were talking about, and I think I may be of assistance to you." "And who are you? And what do you know about this matter?" "My name is Sherlock Holmes, and my business is to know what other people don't know." The stranger seemed convinced by these words, and accepted Sherlock's invitation to come to Baker Street. "What is your name?" Sherlock asked him. John Robinson," he answered. "And your real name?" "Well," the stranger said, and turning an interesting shade of red, "my name is James Ryder." "Head attendant at the Hotel Cosmopolitan." But how do you know?" "The game's up, Ryder. We know about your theft. There's no point denying anything." At this point, Ryder turned rather pale, and simply stood shaking in the corner of Sherlock's sitting room while Holmes retold the whole story. The Countess had been staying at the Hotel Cosmopolitan, and her maid had befriended Ryder and told him about the precious stone belonging to her lady. Together they had arranged a little trap in which Ryder purposely broke something in the Countess's apartment and sent the poor plumber Horner to fix it. Right after Horner had left, Ryder came in to take the stone and to raise the alarm that the room had been burgled. Then Ryder told us the part we didn't know of how the stone got into the goose. It turned out that Mrs. Oakshott was in fact his sister, who fattened birds for the market. One day, when Ryder was visiting his sister, she offered him a bird as a Christmas present. He chose one with a barred tail, as it would be easily recognizable, and used it as a hiding place for the stone. The only fault he made this time was not spotting that there was another goose with a barred tail, exactly the same as the one he had chosen. When Mrs. Oakshott sent all the geese to the market, she was only too sure to keep the goose which she thought her brother had chosen. Ryder's happiness at collecting the goose soon disappeared when he discovered that the goose had no stone inside.